Managed Mentoring Guide to Getting Started in Beekeeping. Protective Gear and Equipment. I am Kevin England. Welcome to the Beekeeper Protection Lesson. In this lesson, we'll explore the various choices you have for beekeeper protection, the clothing, gloves, and other items you'll need to source for your kit. As we move through the lesson, we'll share some considerations and helpful insights on how to make informed choices for outfitting yourself. When it comes to beekeeping, your number one priority is protecting yourself from any possible injuries from a bee sting. It is plausible to be stung on the face, near the eye, and suffer potential nerve damage that will disfigure your face. Now, this is an extremely rare and almost non-existent case, but it illustrates that the possibility exists. We start with this not to alarm you, but to illustrate that stings to the head and neck areas are some of the most dangerous. At all times, you should wear head protection when in the vicinity of the apiary and in the zone where bees will be on patrol to guard their nest. A conservative estimate to what this zone is if you could see the hives, you are in the zone. Realistically, the danger is nearer to the hives, so just keep in mind that you should always protect your head and face when going to do anything with the bees, and actually we mean everything. Everyone's reaction to a sting is an individual experience. That being said, there are some differences in stings, as noted on the slide. The depth of the bee's stinger penetration plays a role in the severity of the reaction sometimes. This becomes important when you consider protective clothing design. Different materials afford different levels of protection. Knowing this, hopefully you will not consider wearing something that saves you a few bucks, an inexpensive suit made of thin Tyvek-like material, and yes, these are available from the marketplace. Having this knowledge also plays a factor when you consider how clothing hangs on your body. It stands to reason that tight-fitting clothing is not ideal in a bee suit. Bees can readily sting through thin substrates, especially if it's sitting flat on your skin. Keeping this in mind, let's move on to protective clothing choices. Protective clothing should always be comfortable while affording protection. Your equipment should fit well so you can move about freely while working the bees. And you also want to pay attention to how hot you might become when operating during a sweltering summer. What you choose is your personal preference, and there are many options to choose from. Pragmatically, white may seem an odd choice, especially given how dirty it can get. The color is best for bees. Consider what a bear looks like to a beehive, a dark, large object. Bees have been conditioned over millennia to see dark objects as a threat. Historically, bee suits are white, but these days you can find them in olive green, tan, and other colors, including darker shades. Our guidance: please stay with white or some very light shade and pass on the more fashionable medium to darker color suits being offered out there in the marketplace. A full head-to-toe bee suit is a logical choice for a beginner. If you are simply and completely adverse to the idea of being stung, then you'll likely consider this option. This is a perfectly suitable choice, no judgment from us. It is plausible for a beekeeper to wear one of these for a full season and never be stung in it. Do consider, though, that they are not very comfortable to work in due to their characteristic bulkiness. Also know that they can become super hot when it's warm outside, so much so that one has to consider taking a break sometimes if they're overheated, and step away to take the suit off and cool off for safety's sake. It's not a problem to start with one of these. Use it until you get some confidence, and then move along to an alternative choice of protective gear. What we notice is most beekeepers eventually switch to more comfortable gear as they get more accustomed to working with the bees. What you wear is personal preference, and it's commonplace to see beekeepers with a mix of gear, switching it up to whatever suits them for the situation. See what I did there? Okay, moving on. Traditional protective clothing consists of garments made from cotton-style canvas materials. In more recent times, suits made from 3-layer mesh fabric have emerged to be the standard. This material is a boon in hot weather as it permits airflow to your body, both letting air in and letting heat out. They are decidedly better than canvas materials, especially when there is a light breeze. Suits made of this material are often a little bulky, but the fabric design is very good at preventing bee stings. I personally have never been stung through my jacket of this style, which shows how effective it is. A bee suit that stops after it comes down over your waist provides an easier time when it comes to bending over, and it still affords protection for your midriff. Common jacket designs come with hoods, and the hoods are secured at the neck with the zipper. You unzip from the front to the back on both sides and flip the hood back when you are in times where you don't need the protection. Now you can also simply buy jackets that don't have a hood. A hoodless jacket is used in combination with a veil that tucks under the jacket's collar. We've observed that it's more prevalent to buy the jacket and the hood combination. Now jackets come with differing designs when it comes to pockets and other features to consider. Let's talk a minute about wearing pants to go with a beekeeping jacket. While bees can sting you below the waist, it's more common for them to attempt to sting you around your head and face. For that reason, you're often not under assault below the belt line. Now, of course, you can be stung anywhere, and if you're going to wear just a jacket, then durable pants are difficult to sting through. No sweatpants, no thin layer material yoga pants. Bees can sting through denim, but usually the stinger does not penetrate well through the durable fabric. Wearing additional layers is another way to thwart stinger penetration. Consider some lightweight clothing under your gear, as it affords just a little bit more protection. If you want to forego the full jumpsuit route, but you still want head-to-toe protection, do it with a combination of a jacket and a pair of beekeeping pants. With this combination, you could choose that specific jacket for its features that you want, while matching it with pants and still have head-to-toe protection. Unlike jeans, these pants are sometimes not very well fitting. They're made for the masses, offered in limited designs and limited sizes. If you're typical, these may work for you. If you are not typical, they're likely going to bunch up at your ankles, be bulky, and probably poor fitting. When it comes to protective clothing, you'll find that there's a lot of creativity in the marketplace. Look around at the various offerings, and unlike the recommendation to buy all wooden wear from one vendor, we prefer to shop around for the exact features we want in the clothing. Some features are gimmicks, and others, like this zip-off face screen, are usually quite useful. What you buy, as we keep saying, is personal preference, and if at all possible, this is the one place where, if you could try to gear on in person, all the better. As a beekeeper, you should own at least one veil. The style pictured on the right is a helmet and veil combination. It has drawstrings that help to cinch the veil closed around your waist. As with protective clothing, veils vary widely in design. Ensure that the part that covers your head is substantial enough so that bees cannot sting through it. Forgo those flappy hot design ones that you might see. They just don't provide much in the way of protection. They look good, not very protective. The catalog items from the big guys generally have it right. They sell so many veils that if they had it wrong, they'd have to fix it. On a relative scale, veils are fairly inexpensive and not too difficult to consider when thinking about buying a couple to try. Having several may seem like an abundance, but it's reasonable to have some spares for those times when you decide to take someone else out into the apiary, because they're going to need protection too. Also, if you buy a couple different styles, you can figure out which one suits you best. These pullover veil vests are another alternative in the marketplace. You might typically wear a light jacket or some other garment over them to protect your torso and arms. Seasoned beekeepers with a deft touch when working bees often go with a common t-shirt like what is pictured here, and this brings up an opportunity to talk about wearing protective clothing. The defensiveness of the colony can change based on a number of factors. Inexperience when working bees results in situations that incite the bees to defensiveness. Banging the hive bodies against each other, smashing bees during inspection, and other things. Bees don't like this, and it causes them to become defensive. In contrast, when you develop a refined touch with bees and the bees are content with your handling, your experience with aggressive bees can be next to nil. This is especially true when there's abundant forage and the bees are just super busy bringing in the goods. It is known that bees can become more defensive when forage is sparse. The point here is to assume that sometimes you can adjust your attire based on conditions. In good times, you might get to the point where you could work your bees in a t-shirt and veil. And this is just another reason to recognize some practical cases for having different options for protective clothing in your arsenal. Beyond body protection, there are other considerations for protective equipment, the kind that both protect you from stings and protect you from injury. Throwing on a pair of Crocs or flip-flops is probably not the greatest choice when heading out into the bee yard. Choose shoes that cover your entire foot and know that stings on the foot are very painful. You'll want something that is sturdy lest you drop a box on your foot or stumble and twist your ankle. Sorry to put it this way, but you only need to be stung once in a sensitive region to know that you do not want bees crawling up the inside of your pant legs. Straps, Velcro loops, we've even seen people take duct tape and tape up their pants. The premise here is close off all gaps so bees will not find a way in. Now, incidentally, if you find that a bee is making its way north under your clothing, know that it is never going to turn around and go back out. Either you leave the yard to a safe place, take off your pants in hopes that you can release the bee before it stings you, or you deliver a quick and decisive blow to the bee to dispatch it from traveling any further. Now, sorry to put it this way, but being pragmatic, sometimes the best offense is a good defense. And a quick tip, no dark socks while beekeeping. Entrances to the hive are low enough that the guard bees come out and sometimes see those dark, juicy ankles and go down there and give you a sting, and tender ankles do not do well with bee stings. Look at the slide and take in the various options. Any textures that are fuzzy and resemble animal hair are a no-go. Any gloves that employ a dark fabric are a bastion for getting stung on the hands. The gloves on the lower left and center are fairly typical and traditional. Bee gloves are typically made from leather, pleather, or some other animal skin. The gloves on the bottom right are nitrile gloves, the same kind you might see in a doctor's office. When looking for gloves, as the slide suggests, look for a light-colored glove that has a comfortable fit and is not snug on your hands. Try to find ones that have good dexterity for your fingers. And do not go for mechanics gloves. While they're comfortable to wear, they're often snug, too thin, and usually dark in color. Sometimes new gloves can be stiff and not very comfortable. You may have to break them in, not unlike the way you would break in a baseball mitt. You really do need the best dexterity you can muster, so here too, if you have the chance to try on the gloves before you buy them, go that route. Some gloves go clear up to the elbows, and we're not fans of these. It's really not necessary to wear a glove that goes to your elbows. From our experience, really long gloves tend to bunch up under your sleeves and become a nuisance. Go for ones that cover your hands and come over your wrists. Now, the nitrile gloves shown here are also a good choice as they provide incredible dexterity, but from our experience, bees do not like to sting through them. It's not that they can't sting through them, but there's something about them that results in the bees not stinging through them very often, and They really do keep your hands clean and you have a deft touch, which is important because you don't crush bees. They do tear sometimes and leave your hands exposed, but you can stop, put on another pair, and get back to work. In time, if you give them a try, you'll find that they're handy to have in your kit and sometimes the only gloves you need. Now, incidentally, we acknowledge there's a landfill impact to this, and that might be another reason for you to go a different route. Again, personal preference. If you're looking for these, they can normally be sourced from a local drugstore near you. Protecting yourself is not limited to keeping yourself from being stung. This is a reminder that masks are mandatory with certain management activities. We discussed this in a previous lesson, and when we get to mite monitoring, we'll make specific recommendations. You cannot skip eye protection for any consideration when you're talking about protective envelopes. Say, for example, you're vaporizing a colony for varroa mite treatments. You're going to need to protect your eye from the acid vapors. Be smart and always remember to consider protecting your invaluable eyesight. Adverse conditions, especially high heat situations, are a real concern. It's a good idea to educate yourself on how to protect yourself when temperatures are soaring. Heat stroke, heat exhaustion are all real-world concerns when wearing a full complement of protective clothing, jackets, akin to a winter jacket during the heat of summer. Keep plenty of liquids on hand and know the danger signs from working in hot conditions. To aid yourself, sweat bands, skull caps that take away some of the sweat, portable held fans, they're all there as options to help protect yourself during the heat. The other item slide is a bit of a kitchen sink when it comes to safety concerns. First and foremost, it's pretty common for beekeepers to encounter back problems. There's a lot of lifting, twisting, and pulling involved. Some of that can be lessened with the use of hive stands and workbenches. Consider a workbench instead of putting the hive boxes down on the ground. With these, you can lift from the waist instead of having to almost touch your toes to pick boxes up from the ground. Back braces like the one in the lower right-hand corner provide additional support. First aid kits and allergy medicines are also warranted. You could talk to your doctor about a prescription for an EpiPen, but be forewarned, we all have sticker shock when it comes to finding out what they cost. Now, realistically, you have to reconcile the peace of mind of having it in your kit should you have a rare but plausible life-threatening bee sting reaction. Having some over-the-counter Benadryl is also a good practice for stocking your kit. By now, it's easy to say there sure is a lot to consider. You might want to go back through this again and make a list to get a sense of all that you need if need be. In this lesson, we covered a lot of ground. Coming back to center, if you had to ask us what to choose as the basic minimum, this is what we would recommend. A 3-layer suit jacket with attached hood coupled with a pair of jeans. Get one that has the new zip-out veil feature if you can find it. A pair of 3-layer gloves that go just above the wrist, and we firmly believe that everyone should have at least one helmet-style veil in their kit. This closes out this presentation. In our next lesson, we'll move into the period of prepping equipment for usage, starting with building frames. We'll follow that with fabricating hives, painting, and a primer on sourcing bees. If you have any questions, you can ask at our next online session, and you can also send an email to the address on the slide. If you're watching from YouTube, you can leave a comment below. If you're not watching from YouTube, note that you can hover over the video, click on the YouTube link that presents, and go to YouTube directly. If you're there, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next lesson.